getting set up, and this is the well-being as well as productivity conference. I learned a very important exercise, the 2020, from my colleague Gabor Nag from Hayworth. And so what I would like you to do is stand up every 20 or 30 minutes for 20 seconds and look outside, kind of 20 feet in front of you. So everyone, please stand up and look outside. And don't forget to breathe. And stretch. Thank you. Great. So we care about you. You are very important. And actually, people are the central asset, the most precious asset of every institution, corporation in the world. So let's take good care of our people. How many of you have been working in distributed teams? Okay, some. Your teammates may be on the 10th floor and you're on the 3rd floor. You are distributed. If you didn't know, you are. What are their local conditions and how are you going to work with them? Well, that's an interesting question we are trying to tackle. I would also like to thank my wonderful students. Some of them are here in the room, so please stand up because I don't know where you sit. Okay, Maria, Young, great. And many more who are in class right now. That's the advantage of running conferences on campus. They pull the attention. And many thanks to MediaX and Konica Minolta who launched funding this exploratory study that has grown tremendously over the last couple of years. So how do you harvest knowledge and foster creativity at all these levels? From the individual level to the team, to the organization, to the enterprise that is connected with other businesses and clients. Our focus is on collaboration technologies that support cross-disciplinary, geographically distributed teamwork, as well as the impact of these technologies on behavior at the individual level, at the team dynamics level, at the business process level, and emerging work practices. So one of the ongoing projects that we started as our MediaX seed has been blossoming is looking at demands of global teamwork as knowledge workers are exposed to 5 key discontinuities that are very disruptive: time, space, culture, discipline, because very often you are working in a cross-disciplinary team, and technology infrastructure. So how many of you have been very often at 6 a.m. in your PJs dialing in on any web conference with your teammates? Okay, some. 10 p.m. How often have you been sitting in long meetings that are not effective and wondering, why am I here? How many of you really think about how precious your time is and how little you have to actually reflect and work on your project? So what if we really think very hard about well-being and try to give people back some time? More questions. Another quiz. How many of you know your workload, number of projects, and how many of these project teams are co-located versus distributed? Let me tell you that every simple task that you have to work together with people that are not co-located with you will become very complex. You will encounter what we call hidden costs. Miscommunication, coordination, and decision wait time. How many of you know your teammates' workload? Are they busy? Yes. You dial in. Everybody says, how is it going? Very hectic. Your busy and my busy are very different. We may have the same number of projects, but my projects are all global. Yours are all co-located. Complexities are very different. How many of you really know all the workplace and technology infrastructure choices that your company is offering you, and which one to choose when you interact with your teammates, either co-located or distributed? How many of you know, in the context of wherever you find yourself, what is your potential degree of engagement? Are you underperforming or underutilizing what you are being offered? Do you know all these choices? And last but not least, how often does your workload, the place you work, and the infrastructure you have available change? How often? 5 times a day, because you are at your desk, then you are in the meeting room, then you are in the cafe, then you are in the car, by the way, doing GoToMeeting or Link or WebEx with your cyber partners. How often? Many times a day, once a week, once a month, never. Probably more often. So as we talk about well-being in our group, we started to really make a clear distinction between well-being and wellness. Wellness is very important. Well-being cannot happen without wellness or health. But well-being really tries to address productivity, engagement, satisfaction, collaboration, cooperation, creativity, and I want to emphasize here that our focus is knowledge workers in the workplace, where the workplace is anywhere, anytime, with anyone. So with this in mind, we ask ourselves, and I ask you, in your company, who owns well-being? Which department do you go and talk with? Who is taking care? We know wellness, that's HR. They take care of your health benefits. But going beyond that, who owns that? So in this study, we have been focusing on a number of research questions that look at choice, transparency, synchronicity, and feedback, because we strongly believe and have a lot of evidence that people are wired for feedback. If you give them feedback, you give them control, and you allow them to self-regulate as individuals and as teams. So how can we accomplish this? Let's look at choice. We have been using in the PBL lab a framework that I developed in the late 90s, known as the Bdi Framework, bricks, bits, and interaction, or physical, virtual, and social. Now, in any institution and organization, you have these business units. They are represented by the bricks, your facility or capital development division. They take good care of building buildings and spaces for us. Then you have the bits part, the IT business unit, and then you have the HR and business development. They are developing processes, business processes, and work practices. They typically don't talk with each other, but they want the best for us. And they throw us into this brave new world And what we have been promoting is really to have an integrated approach so that we bring these people together and create environments that really take care of the people so they can be creative and productive. So how do we make choices? Through the MediaX project, we defined a framework that we call 6 steps to engagement and developed an environment called EMOC, Engagement Matrix of Choices, that takes people, allows people to make their local conditions transparent and make explicit choices. First and foremost, I know where I am, right? When you go to Delphi, you know what's written on the arch. Know thyself. So step 1, understand what your local conditions are. What is your potential level of engagement? Step 2, make that transparent to your teammates. So I know where you are. What are your local conditions? Maybe you are working, traveling, taking Caltrain from here to San Francisco. But I am in headquarters having all the cool technology and collaboration environment. Once we all know where we are, we can start to think about our goals towards higher degrees of engagement and look at we know where we want to go. Want doesn't mean can. So because each team member can be in a very different condition, and we assume now we know where we are, we know where we want to go, and we determine where we can go. What is the lowest practical denominator as we make choices on place, on infrastructure, on work practice and process and location. And then we make a commitment and we move. So we are there today. Tomorrow or in a couple of hours, our conditions are changing. And so this needs to be an iterative process, a continuous process. So we heard about metrics. You are what you measure. How do we determine engagement and can we have a gold standard so that we can compare our current state with where we want to go, where we can go? And we developed 4 levels of engagement. The first is awareness. I can hear you. The second is attention. I can hear you and I can see you. And in our world, in our research world, seeing doesn't necessarily mean I see you because we are co-located or I see you because we are in Skype or web conferencing, but we may be in a virtual world and I see your avatar. So we share some physical, digital, or virtual or robotic environment. The next level is participate, where we also allow co-control of content or equipment. And the last, which of course is our target, is co-creation, so really creating new knowledge. And the gold standard for us is when everyone in the team can hear, see, control, and co-create. Anything less needs to be known, first of all, transparency, and then you need to have plans how to compensate. To move forward, we like to think about triangulation approaches, and we are looking at how we can allow people to make their local conditions visible and track them continuously and assess their potential degree of engagement. Second, to allow them to self-report their perceived degree of engagement and then compare that with the measured one and with the potential one. So we understand whether you are missing some opportunities or you should target some opportunities. How do we do that? In our case, as Hai-Song already kindly mentioned, we like to eat our own dog food and test. Test in the field, and to test that, we understand that we cannot put all our global team members in fMRI machines, which would be kind of awkward because they need all their artifacts and equipment. Second, we want to follow them longitudinally as they work on projects. Thirdly, we want to take advantage of all the emerging sensor technology that is becoming wearable and ubiquitous so that it does not act as a major intervention in the work practice and space, and people can focus on their activities and we can observe them. So it's all about you and your well-being and productivity. And this is the instrumented environment that we have currently created, and it is evolving as we are adding new sensors thanks to partners. Actigraph for sleep, which provides feedback on quality and efficiency of sleep, and also an indicator how you recover or do not recover if your work practices are leading to chronic burnout and stress. Second, we work with a company in Finland, FirstBit, that has donated a more medical accurate device, FirstBit, to measure heart rate variability. I have to indicate that our focus currently is collecting longitudinal data during global virtual team meetings that happen every week, and these meetings go for 2.5 hours. And the participants are global. I'll tell you in a second about the test bed. So we are providing feedback on heart rate variability during these events. With NeuroSky, a company here in Silicon Valley, we brought in MindWave, which is a very light brain sensor, brainwave sensor. It looks like a headset, very light. It's almost perfect. To really give feedback in real time about your attention and relaxation, and really identify moments when you are almost in flow mode, when attention and meditation are in sync. Just like when you are in the shower, you are relaxed and focused, and all the good ideas come up. With our Finnish partners at Aalto University and FIO, Finnish Institute of Organizational Health, we developed and deployed a cognitive test that we deploy before and after the meetings take place to identify vigilance and attention. It is a task switching test, and we want to see, you know, if your meeting is at 10 p.m. and it goes until midnight, how are you before and after? An interesting insight that we have, and we are continuing to collect data. We started this experiment in January, and it goes until May, so 17 weeks about. What we found was that the people are actually highly engaged and are doing better in this COG test after a 2.5 hour meeting, no matter whether it's your comfort zone time or it's very late at night after a 2.5 hour meeting. And it looks at your hit rate and your reaction time. So accuracy in identifying the tasks on screen. We also collect data on activities during the day, around the days we collect the data. And last but not least, a sensor that probably many of you know, Kinect, that observes body motion, and I'll show you in a second an application that we developed to identify and determine engagement and degrees of engagement during meetings. A word about our test bed. As you heard, I have been running for 21 years a global teamwork education program that brings together students from architecture, engineering, mechanical, construction, management, finance, and life cycle financial management that come from universities worldwide, Asia, Europe, and the Americas. And all these global student teams are working on university building projects over 2 quarters, so between January and May, and are a real test bed as they work on big projects with a budget, with a client, with local environmental conditions. Here is one example, just to give you a sense of the complexity of the buildings that they design and evaluate and model and visualize and integrate. So very complex tasks, and if you want to see some of the projects, please visit pbl.stanford.edu. Here is one of our latest teams, a bit of data base. We have this year the largest cohort, 49 students, 7 global teams, geographically distributed and cross-disciplinary and multicultural. This particular team is one of the 7 teams. There are 7 cultures from US to Mexico to Sweden to Poland to China to Korea and New Zealand. They are located in 4 universities: Stanford, Georgia Tech, Royal Technical University, Stockholm, Sweden, and Warsaw University of Technology, Poland. And what you see here are 2 examples of the collaboration ecosystem and technology environments that they use. In the upper right corner is a typical web conferencing environment where they look at one document, in this case, the topo access conditions on their construction site. And the 2 lower images are the virtual collaboration environment that every team has. So they are there as avatars, owning, constructing, and co-creating their collaboration space as well as the content that they create around their project, solving problems, negotiating, exploring, explaining, annotating, sketching, and whatnot. So here's a bit of data. We looked at one of the discontinuities, technology, as you remember. And as we look at these 2 environments, what we saw is what we call moving from stacks of content in the web conferencing environment to spreads of content in context in the 3D M3R collaboration environment. M3R stands for Mixed Media, Mixed Reality environment that we developed, where you see the physical iRoom standing for interactive room, where if you come visit us, it's a big room with 9 smart boards, touch displays, and that is integrated with a virtual world where you can have any number of displays so that the content is there and you can co-create, correlate, compare, and whatnot. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's about choice, really understanding what is the task, what are the artifacts that you bring to the table or you want to co-create, and then choose the space, choose the collaboration technology that can increase your engagement level. So here's what we found as we looked at attention and number of documents that are shared. Web conferencing, great if you focus on one. The moment you reach 3 to 5, depending how good your visual memory is, you start to forget. And then you start to say, hey, Joe, can you show again your cost spreadsheet? And so what people do is they have to reshuffle the deck because everybody can see just what's on top. Versus in M3R, mixed media, mixed reality, you have content in context, and you constantly can correlate, compare, visualize, and make decisions, even though you are not directly engaged in the current topic of discussion. More than that, from eye tracker data, we analyzed time on task and frequency of time on task related to engagement. And what we found was very exciting, about 24% higher, more time on screen, on task in M3R, in the mixed media, mixed reality environment versus the web conferencing environment. And to go back to what Cliff Nass was telling us last year about multitasking, it's not healthy. Remember that. What we observed was that in M3R, multitasking was almost non-existent. And we asked, so why? Well, why? Because we are in the attention economy, and if you are in the meeting and you are asking yourself, why am I here? Because I'm not looking at what I'm interested in and I'm not engaged in the current dialogue, you start multitasking in the web conferencing environment because you don't have access to the content in context. We developed prototype, an EMOC prototype, thanks also to Microsoft Azure Cloud Research Program. We deployed it, and it allows us to track your local physical conditions. So space, workload, technology, infrastructure, and skill, to make that transparent to your teammates. So you can constantly see what is your workload, and it actually contains a heuristic factor on virtual project teams. So if you say you have 3 projects and I have 3 projects, our workload is not equal because your 3 projects are, one is virtual and 2 co-located, and mine are all virtual. Okay, I get signals here. I have to wrap up. And so we developed a very interesting taxonomy that allows us to know where I am based on engagement capacity, engagement potential, looking at devices, tools, and locations, and give people choice and feedback based on what tools and devices you have, as well as identify synchronicity in terms of the infrastructure you have. Devices, we want everyone to be on the same page, on the same wavelengths. So here we see these options are, everyone has the same technologies and tools. And with Kinect, we developed a mechanism to identify engagement based on body posture. So when we are co-located, body posture tells us something about you are engaged in dialogue, you are preparing to say something, or you are just listening or disengaged. But when we are globally distributed, all this becomes invisible. So thanks to the sensor based on distance, based on head position and gesture, because we know when we get engaged, very often we also explain with gestures what our mental model is. In some cultures, we start to see degree of engagement, disengagement, and that becomes feedback and a nudge to me to re-engage. And at the team level, E-ring allows us to see what is the situation of all our team members. So when there is a red dot, this circle actually starts to go around. And once I turn yellow, it slows down, and when I'm green, it stops. And I'll close with some images from mind waves. This is a scenario where we see 3 people, and they are collaborating, but observe what happens here. The third person, before and after this red circle, was not engaged. It's feedback. I start to see what is my state, and we see what your state is. This is a listen scenario. Again, we lost someone here, and then re-engaged. So real-time feedback on your state. As a takeaway, I would like you to remember 4 key targets: enabling explicit choices, continuous transparency of your local conditions, maximizing synchronicity, and when you don't have it, plan to compensate, and create feedback to nudge people to choose their next level of engagement and reach a higher level of performance. And with that, I close with a warm invitation. Come join us. We are looking for partners, data, technology, as well as partners in crime in research. Thank you.